Squadron governing all things human resources, manpower, morale, welfare, and recreation for 15,000 people. In and out of uniform, Latetia is passionate about healing of all survivors of trauma. During her career, she has had the opportunity to serve as a sexual assault response coordinator, known as SARC. As a SARC and throughout her military career, she trained thousands of Department of Defense civilians and military members on enthusiastic consent, diversity and inclusion, trauma-informed care, cultural competency, and empathetic inclusive response to trauma. During and after her Master's of Social Work program, she served as a civilian volunteer counselor with the Center for Sexual Assault Survivors in Newport News, Virginia, advocating for victims in the hospital, coordinating support, running a weekly support group, and conducting community education. She has had the honor of conducting training with NOVA in the past under the Military Members and Families Project on topics around military sexual trauma and its impacts. She is a passionate speaker, an advocate working diligently for survivors on their journey of healing, as well as building educated communities ready to support them. Latetia, thank you so much for being here with us today. The floor is yours.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Seneca. Good evening, everyone, from wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here. Like she said, I am Tisha today. Earlier, I got to be Major Bland, but tonight I get to be Tisha, and I'm all for it. So super excited to be here with you. I want to start by just saying thank you to Stephanie, who I ran into at a conference last year in this very quick, random kind of conversation that sparked the involvement with the SAN and this wonderful team. So I just want to say thank you, Stephanie and team, for welcoming me and giving me an opportunity to just do something that makes me feel like I'm paying my rent on Earth. So thank you so much for the opportunity. So tonight, I'm super excited to talk about boundaries and shame. As Seneca said, I run a support group for sexual assault survivors. I have a roster of about 80 phenomenal women who are actively healing, who are in all different phases of their healing journey. So a lot of what we'll talk about today is really from that perspective, doing this support group and all of the outreach for the last 5 years. So we'll really be speaking from that perspective. I am by no means an expert. I just have a lot of experience. I'm also a fellow survivor of military sexual trauma, and so I'll also speak somewhat from that perspective tonight too. And so I ask for open minds, open hearts, big deep breaths, and just a lot of community tonight. I want to see you all support each other as a group person. I love when people support one another, when you share, so feel free to do that as well. I also love to see some head nods and some energy in the camera, so feel free to do that. That encourages me. Let me know I'm going on the right path. Yes, I love it, Cindy. Thank you for that. Yes, we love good energy. Thumbs up. We love it all. It all just gives me good energy, lets me know I'm on the right path with you all. So without further ado, I'm going to change the slide because I want y'all to get in on the action. Oh, did I see some rocket ships? Oh, y'all flattering me now. I love it. So I want y'all to get in on the action. If you take a moment and take your cell phone and scan this QR code, I'm also going to drop the link in the chat so you have access to our on kind of an active poll. This is a completely anonymous poll. I don't get like a recording of your name or anything. It just gives me like a number of people kind of signing in. So if you could just take a moment, scan the QR code and get in on the fun, because we're gonna talk a little bit together today and just get some ideas for you all. So if I can get a few thumbs up once you all are in the Slido, just give me a thumbs up once you've been able to connect. I'll give it a few seconds. I'm also in very dry Colorado, so I'll be drinking a lot of water while we're here. All right, give me a thumbs up when you're in, and I'll check the screen. All right, I see a few thumbs up in there. Beautiful. Cool. I see some head nods. All right. Okay. You don't, Pamela, do you not see you don't see the QR code on the screen? It could be me.
All I have is a link.
Oh, okay.
And I tried to copy the first link, and I couldn't get it copied, and I couldn't get it over to put it in my browser.
Okay.
And
Let me see.
I'm really lazy. I just don't want to type it. I don't type well like this.
You are not lazy by any stretch of imagination. We're gonna let me just see if this one works here. But thank you for the feedback, because that lets me know if we're, I want to make sure we're all connecting. The folks who can see the slides, can you see the QR in the corner? Is it showing up for you? It's not showing up for anyone? That is strange. It is here. I can see it, which is odd. Okay. But could you see the first slide? Oh,
it's
you know
just that
what?
you're just not sharing your screen, that's all.
I haven't hit share yet. Wow. So on my screen, it looks like I shared it, but on your screen, it doesn't, because I haven't hit that button yet. My apologies, everyone. User error over here. Okay. Now can we see it? Good to go? Can y'all see that okay?
Good to go. We gotcha.
Okay. Got it. Sorry about that. Okay, now I think we're on the right path. We'll go to the QR code. Now can y'all see the QR code? Perfect. Okay, we're getting there, y'all. Sorry about that. Cool. All right, now I'll take, so a couple folks I think are already in. It looks like I have a few active participants in the poll. So take a moment, get your phone out, and we'll get started. And I'll just get like a thumbs up, a head nod. You can wave your snack at me. I'm cool with that too. All right. I think we got a few folks in. So my first question for you today is, what are boundaries to you? I want to know what are they? Maybe what allows you to set a boundary, or you could also say, hey, I don't really know what a boundary is. So I want that first. So go ahead and type it in to the box in your Slido, in your phone, or in your computer if you have it on your computer. Just type in some things and it's going to build out right in front of us.
Latetia, I don't know if it's just me, but I went to the website and it just says no active polls.
Really? Okay. It doesn't show you like boundaries and shame at the top left?
Oh, yeah, when I clicked on something, I have that now.
Okay.
And what would I do to type in something?
So there should be just a word box that pops up that says, what are boundaries to you? Did that come up for you?
No.
Oh, darn. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what it could be. What is it? Do you mind telling me what your screen looks like? Is it just like all
It's just it looks like a menu, and boundaries and shame is at the top. It kind of looks like I could click on it, but when I try to click on it, nothing happens.
nothing happens? Darn.
And then there's a line that says live interaction, switch Slido.
I had to go back in and then it worked.
Okay, maybe re-click
that.
it. Okay, maybe that's what it is. Sorry about that. That's
No.
all right. We're ironing out the kinks early, so the rest of our polls should be good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that worked. I just hit the back button and forward it. I'm good.
Thank you so much for the feedback, Katie and Cindy. I appreciate that. No, that helps kind of keep it going. So thank you. All right, so please keep putting your input. It looks like it's building out. Hopefully y'all can see my folks typing in. I'm going to start reading some of these off because I think they're really, really great. So boundaries, they're a way that I care for myself and my autonomy. Talk to me, yes. Zones of acceptable behavior, amen. Protect mental health, absolutely. Rules, yes, boundaries are rules. Protective layers, yes. Somebody is out here doing the work. I love it. Protective layers. They are tough to enforce, right? Boundaries are absolutely tough to enforce. Let's see. They're the only control sometimes we have. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Being able to say no and as a full sentence. Absolutely. Permission to say no. Beautiful. Self-protection. Respect for oneself. Personal safety zones. Respect. Y'all big on this respect. Come on, Aretha. Come in the room. I love it. Two-way agreements, right? Two-way agreements. I love that. And we'll get into why boundaries are truly a two-way agreement, because we want to set boundaries with people that we want relationships with, that we want things to work with, right? That's why we do it. Yes, things I say no to, absolutely. Because again, no is a complete sentence. Yes, these are phenomenal. Fences, ooh, I love that one. The movie Fences is phenomenal. But yes, fences are, we got to put limits around things, stress limits, beautiful. And healthy. I love that so many of y'all put healthy, that it got bigger on the screen. I hope y'all see that, because boundaries are absolutely healthy. And sometimes we're not conditioned to set boundaries. And so we don't always feel comfortable with boundaries. We don't always feel like they are successful, that they are healthy. And so they almost can feel unhealthy for us to set, and they can be hard to enforce, like one of our teammates said on here. Guardrails, absolutely necessary for good relationships. Yes. Yes, talk to me. These are wonderful. They're guardrails, because we need guardrails and fences, right? We need guardrails on these highways. We need fences around these houses. So absolutely, we need them around our perspective, our healing journey. I love this. Y'all are outstanding. I saw a few folks taking a picture. I'll give y'all like another 10 seconds if you want to take a picture of this. It's phenomenal. All right. Beautiful. Thank y'all so much for participating in that poll. This helps give us kind of a level set on where we all are in our boundary journey, or what we think about boundaries. So we'll go into some data about boundaries, or some information about boundaries, right? Y'all said it, y'all hit the nail on the head. There are clear personal limits, guidelines, and rules. We want to set boundaries with relationships that we want to work, because we want to be treated the way we want to be treated, right? We want to treat others the way they want to be treated. And it just honors our space altogether. And so there are absolute clear limits. And the reason that it is a two-way agreement is because you want to have that discussion, have that conversation with someone, so that it's clear. So if there is a boundary violation, if there is something that bounces up against your values, you can have that clear line of communication with that person, and you can say, hey, here's what I need from you. Here's what I desire. Here's what I don't desire. And let's move from there. And so I just love highlighting that it's a clear personal limit. Of course, it's protecting one's physical, emotional, and mental well-being. So somebody put in there, I think it was one of the first comments, protection. Boundaries are protection. It's how we protect ourselves. And especially us as survivors, protecting ourselves is so paramount. When we are recovering from trauma, when we're recovering from those spaces, our entire psyche is now changed into finding the fastest route to survival. And so what we do is we try to learn things faster. We try to reduce time in between reaction or event and reaction. And so the way that we do that is constantly kind of protecting ourselves, finding ways to protect ourselves. And sometimes we do that in a healthy way, and sometimes we do that in an unhealthy way. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. But it sets those right and left limits. And for all of us are military folks, so we know right and left limits of guidance from our leadership. Well, we got to have guidance in this leadership, because we are leaders of our own bodies, minds, and well-being. And so we got to set those right and left limits for one another as we go about our relationships, because we want them to work. Boundaries are so important because we are conditioned to say yes. A lot of women who've been socialized as women in our society, we often are conditioned to be the caretaker, right? We're supposed to serve in that capacity, to do the empathy work, the compassion work, all of those things. And sometimes that makes it really difficult for us to say no. And so boundaries are so important, because it reminds us that we can say no to things. We can say, you know what, that doesn't fit where I am right now in my life. When I'm joking with people, I say, that's not my ministry. That's just not my ministry. And that can tell people that this either is bumping up against a boundary of mine or bumping up against a value of mine. And I want to enforce both in my life. We are often sometimes conditioned to be people pleasers, right? We're always saying yes. Sometimes we are maybe overgiving because we maybe have something to prove. I know that was my experience as a young lieutenant. I was overgiving, or we could be in isolation, right? And so setting a boundary around what we need and how we need it, how we show up in the world is so important. And then sometimes it's just hard for us, especially as trauma survivors, to recognize our personal needs. I know when I was going through my initial parts of my healing journey, one of the things I always would highlight is that I don't know what my body needs right now. I don't even know how to check in. And thank goodness for therapy, because we love us some good therapy. My therapist would tell me, like, all right, well, let's just do some 5 senses. Let's just figure out where you are, because sometimes we just don't know what we need. And when we've been caregiving, when we've been giving so much of ourselves, we often forget that we need some things too, right? We might need a little rest. We might need a little snack. We might need a hug. We might need a kind word. And sometimes we forget that because we're giving so much of ourselves, especially as service members and especially as trauma survivors. Any questions on boundaries? Anything coming up in the chat? Let me make sure my chat window is open too. So I want to make sure we are
There's
talking about.
nothing in the chat right now.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sounding off. Thank you. Awesome. So yeah, boundaries, that's what they are. So boundaries have 3 categories. And some people, if you look in the research, especially like some therapy aids and worksheets when you're doing boundary work in therapy, often they'll talk about porous boundaries, rigid boundaries, and healthy boundaries. And I thought, let's find something cooler. And there's some phenomenal researchers out there with a little bit of alliteration to show us something that we can maybe remember a little easier. And so there are breakable boundaries, right, that are porous. So these are boundaries that are, we've kind of said, or we know that we need, right? I really like when my spouse lets me know when they are going to be late from the time that we would normally meet, right? We want to be at home by 6 so we can have dinner together. So I really enjoy when my spouse lets me know that they're going to be home by 6. But then like maybe they hit or miss with that boundary. Maybe they, my partner maybe doesn't do it, and I'm okay with it. All right, well, you didn't do it this time. You didn't tell me, we didn't communicate. It's okay. And it's all bendable, right? It's bendable, breakable. And that can sometimes be an unhealthy boundary, because when you enforce it, it lets them know how you should be treated, versus maybe building something like resentment from a boundary that's been broken and maybe not acknowledge that it's been broken. So being mindful of those breakable, porous boundaries is so important. When I used to teach Sapper, we would talk about like, those like slotted spoons that have like the holes in them. And so if your boundary is porous and you pour the material from that boundary, the things that you want onto, right? This is your boundary. You pour the material that you need. Some of it's going to fall through, right? And you don't want those things to fall through, because it really can just damage your relationship. So keep that in mind. And then we'll go to the far right and we'll talk about bulletproof boundaries. So I'm sure we all have seen it, especially in our service time, where folks are just impenetrable, right? It's just like, they are just not going to give. They're not going to budge on like the feeling or the notion, the rule, the limit, the fence. They're just not budging. That fence is made out of like Teflon, like Mars level metal, right? It ain't going nowhere. And sometimes that can be unhealthy, right? Because we don't necessarily want to bend in our boundary, but we definitely want our boundaries to be reasonable. And that's why we want to have those conversations with people in our lives. So if it is, if you don't come home at 6 o'clock when I say we do, you can't come in the house at all. Yes, that is a boundary, but my partner does live here, right? And so maybe that bulletproof boundary, no matter what, and she got to sleep in her car, might be a little unhealthy for us, right? May not make a marriage last too long. And so being mindful of how we enforce those boundaries. Yes, they should have maybe a bit of flexibility so that you can negotiate, but not be completely breakable so that we build resentment, or completely bulletproof so that the folks around us no longer want to be in relationships with us. Does that make sense? Okay, I see. I love the head nods. This is like, I love it. And then we have balanced boundaries, right? So it's the, hey, I recognize that we talked about me wanting you to be home at 6, because I really, that's a big part of my process. It's a big part of what I need at night. And I noticed maybe last week, this wasn't how you showed up. So let's talk about that, right? And yes, it doesn't mean she gets to sleep in her car, because we don't want that, right? But we do get to at least negotiate. Maybe 6 o'clock is too early. Maybe work is pulling at your partner too long and they need to come a little later, and it's okay. And so balanced boundaries kind of give us an opportunity to negotiate so that we can have a healthy yet clear discussion with the people we want to have relationships with. Okay. Love it. So there are all kinds of types of boundaries. What types of boundaries do you all know about or have heard about? Maybe you can just put them in the chat. We didn't do a poll for this one. What are the types of boundaries that you've seen? I'll give you the cheat code in like 30 seconds, but I just want to see what's on your mind. What are the types of boundaries?
Rigid is
Rigid.
one of the.
Absolutely. There are absolutely rigid boundaries. Talk to me. What else? Sometimes there's boundaries around your Somebody got it for me. Around your body, right? How many people have met folks who are not huggers? Right?
Someone just chimed in with body.
Somebody put in body. See, you got me, Kimberly, right?
And relationships. Sorry, that was the
yes.
next one that was put in.
Talk to me. Yes, relationships. Absolutely. Sometimes if you're not a hugger, one of the things I've had to learn, because I'm a big hugger, is physical boundaries. Like some people don't want that. Maybe they want a high five, a fist bump, or maybe they want a head nod and they don't want to be touched at all. And being mindful of that is so important, right? Personal space. Absolutely. Personal space is a big one, right? Time boundaries. Talk to me, time boundaries. Yes. Like these are all really, really good types of boundaries that y'all are bringing up. I appreciate it. There's physical, right, or sexual boundaries. And for those of us who have experienced trauma, especially in the body, one of our biggest protective layers is how our body is interacting with other people in the world. And so being mindful of how we set our touch boundaries, making sure that people are asking before they touch us, even if it seems harmless, right? We don't know what people have gone through. People are icebergs. And so we are only knowing the surface, the little bitty piece that we can see above the water when we meet a person. And so we don't know what they've been through. So being mindful of how we ask and asking before we touch someone is so powerful. And it offers a space of control for that survivor. That person is now having a space to say, you know what, I can control what happens to my body simply by letting someone know, you know what, I'm not a hugger. That's not my ministry. Right? I'll fist bump you, or maybe I just need a good head nod. We used to call it the LT head nod, right? And that would be it. So keeping that in mind, sexual choice is a big part of that. A lot of the survivors that I've worked with are very big on learning how to have sexual choice in their lives, especially unfortunately if they were harmed younger. And so they're learning what it means to say yes or no to sex, or yes or no to different types of interaction, romantic or intimate interaction. So being mindful of that is so important. There are also mental and emotional boundaries, right? We have got to protect and guard our mental health, especially as survivors. There's often rhetoric in the news and in the Twitter streets that can sometimes harm us, that can sometimes introduce self-blame. And so being mindful of that for us is so important. Sharing your story, right? Your story, your choice. And that's why I love that title. Your story is your choice. You can never share it, and that is totally acceptable. You can also share it with people you trust, and that is also acceptable. You can boundary your story. You can boundary your well-being. And then, of course, boundaries help us actually manage expectations. And so when we manage expectations, we avoid things like resentment or just negative relationship issues. And so I love that about mental and emotional boundaries. Intellectual or spiritual boundaries are so important too, right? There are spaces where we can have beautiful intellectual, political, historical conversations with folks. But sometimes the conversations can bump up against a boundary. And sometimes we see that when political climates change. We see that when laws change in certain areas. We see that when families' lifestyles maybe change. And sometimes dad or mom may speak to us differently, may see us as that child or what have you, and their opinions might be a little different or bounce up against a boundary for us. And so being really mindful of, I think this is an intellectual or spiritual boundary, and I want to make sure that this relationship that I want to work, that person understands that this is bouncing up against an intellectual or spiritual boundary. Time boundaries, somebody put time in there, amen, because your time is precious. We only got a limited amount of it here on earth. And so we want to spend it in the best ways we know how. And so letting people know that, hey, I probably only have an hour for this is really important. I know me, one of my weaknesses is time boundaries because I love being present with people. But being mindful of their time too is so important because they want to be empathetic. They want to be present, but also being mindful that they probably got other things to do. And so that's always something I try to keep in mind for folks. But you also deserve time boundaries. Again, it's a way I think that we take control of our bodies and our presence, that we can have that. And then finally, material boundaries. So our things are ours, right? I know all of y'all have worked so hard to get what you got. And so when you don't want to loan your car to your sibling, you can say no. And if you don't want to have someone stay in your guest room for a month or two, you have the option to say no to that. And it's not that you don't want that person in your life, or that you don't want them to drive your car, or that you don't want them to, mess up your space or ruin your car because you don't trust them. It's really that car is mine and it's really precious to me, or my space is really peaceful to me. I finally garnered it the way I want. And I deserve to have that. And so it's okay. If no one has told you today, it is okay to say no to those material things that people may ask of you, or the use of your stuff. And one of the things I loved in the research is material boundaries, material boundaries as it pertains to finances. Finances are a big one. And sometimes those of us who have servant hearts, who are servant leaders, as all of you are in this room, sometimes we say, you know what, I do have a little bit extra. Let me go ahead and give it to someone. And then you may pour from your cup, and your cup may not get full again. And that might be difficult. And so being mindful that you also can say no, just like you say no to that car. You can say no to that financial loan. You can say no to that $20 to your niece. You can say no to all of it if that is bumping up against your boundary, right? Maybe they're always asking and now you feel depleted or you feel used, and you don't deserve to feel those things. And so setting those boundaries is so important. Any questions on that? All right. And I'll keep my chat window open. I think it's, I'm trying to move it out of the way in my notes, but I think we're good. So if something does come up for you, please feel free to chime in. All right. So the beautiful thing about the group that I hold, that I love, is that my girls will call me out and we call each other out. And it's wonderful because sometimes you need that. And sometimes you need okay, thank you, Seneca. Sometimes you need someone to call you out. You need someone to say, hey girl, you know that boundary that you keep saying is getting bumped up against, you keep that you keep feeling a certain way about, or you're growing that resentment for that sibling or whoever. You're still making it a little porous. You're making it a little bendable, a little breakable. And how about we work ourselves out of that? I see. Oh, here we go. Yeah, thank you, Cassandra. Let me know once I'll check the chat again to see about that question that someone put in the chat. I definitely want to answer it, Melanie. So sometimes we have to call each other out. And so I love when they call me out and they say, hey, this sounds like a poor boundary. Let's work on that together. Because we all may exhibit some things of having poor boundaries. So I want y'all to take a look at this visual and just let me know, maybe something that resonates for you, like something that you said, you know what, that's probably why I'm struggling to set this boundary with someone. Like for me, especially being in a command position, being in the military for as long as I have, feeling responsible for the happiness of others, oh man, I see some head nods. Y'all know what it's like. It's just a little tough because you want people to thrive. You want to feel like they're doing well under your leadership. You want to take care of them as much as possible. And so you want them to be happy. You want them to be pleased. But guess what? We're not going to please everybody. We just not. I have almost 300 people under me now. And I can tell you right now, there are days where I know I'm not going to make you happy. I know, right? Because I got boundaries. And I need to enforce those boundaries. My mission set has boundaries and I need to enforce that. So feeling responsible for other people's happiness was always something that felt, I always felt very deeply as to why I couldn't set boundaries. What about you all? Anything else in this graphic that has kind of, resonated for you? Like, this is probably why I couldn't set that boundary. Let me know. What about telling someone when you're hurt? Oof. Talk to me, Katie. I agree with others to avoid conflict. Absolutely. Right? Sometimes it's just easier to give in, right? Avoid speaking up when my feelings are hurt really hits home. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, avoiding speaking up is just, sometimes we do it because it might make our lives a little easier, or it wards off threat. I don't need threat to my ego. I don't need threat to my time. I don't need threat to my position today. Like, just nobody got time for that right now, right? And so it can be difficult, or it can be easy, to avoid the conversation, to just mitigate the conflict. Even when you are hurt, even when your boundary is not honored, And we need to honor those boundaries, and your boundaries deserve to be honored. So absolutely. Thank you all for chiming in. Yes, all of these. Yes. And right. Thank you for bringing that up. It does make us mad at ourselves too, right? And that's where we're going to talk about a little bit of that shame in there. That, man, maybe I can't do this, right? Or maybe my boundary isn't fruitful, right? Sometimes we'll doubt that this feeling that we're getting, right? In our second brain, our gut is saying, you know what, something is wrong, something's off. And we're just like, you know what, it's not off. I'm tripping. I'm the one I got it wrong. I got my signals crossed. And we do that. And we start to doubt ourselves. And then, that does breed maybe even self-resentment, right? Thank you for bringing that up. All right. So we got a lot of things in here. Guilt. Guilt is also a big one, especially for those of us who've survived what we've survived. Saying yes, acquiescing to things like, all right, well, you know what, I'll do it. And I think for service members, that's a very unique one for us too, because saying yes, right, saluting smartly is a part of our culture, right? Boss says go left, we going left. I don't know what left is. It might be off a cliff. We don't know, but I'm going left because that's what we've been conditioned to do as service members, right?
I want to jump in with a
Please.
question.
Yeah, please.
So we just have a question that says, I wonder how people would react to me if I started to have boundaries. Would they think that I care less?
Ooh,
Sorry, I also didn't need you to answer that now. I was just
Oh,
writing about
I
those
love it.
boundaries that you put in there and my thought process that I go through.
No, yes, please. I know this works. And you even got some love in the chat about that question. Colleen said, I wonder how people will react to me if I started to have boundaries. Would they think I care less? That's a great question. And I think often when we start building the narrative of, you know what, my brain says it doesn't feel good, my body says it doesn't feel good, I really need to enforce this boundary. In maybe a very caring space, right? A partner or a family member. And I think what I've learned is that part of the narrative that I've had to build around boundaries is I want this relationship to work. I care about you so much. And that's why I need to let you know that you talking about politics at dinner is not going to work for me. Right? Like, I think, at least what I found, right? And sometimes when we do boundary scripting in group, is that's kind of how we started, right? Like, if you've ever taken Toastmasters, they call it the crap sandwich, right? You say something nice at the beginning, you say what you really need to say in the middle, and then you maybe end it on something nice too, right? Like the crap sandwich or whatever, you want to put in that sandwich. And I find that that's been the thing that works for me in healing, is just to say, hey, I just want you to know I want this relationship to work, and I care about you so much, but I also want you to know that the way that it's going to work is this boundary. So I hope that gives some insight, at least from my experience. Thank you for asking that. That was awesome. And I also see saying sorry for things I'm not responsible for. Come on now. Ownership of things that aren't mine to carry. Absolutely. And that's hard because we shouldn't be saying sorry for things that aren't us, and sometimes don't have anything to do with us. And again, uniqueness to military survivors, right? Accountability is a big thing baked into our leadership, right? If it happens in your flight or in your platoon or in your squadron, right? If that something happens, you are automatically accountable. It's automatically yours. And there's a space for extreme ownership. There is a space for that. But in our personal lives, in our personal bodies, in our intellectual well-being, in our mental well-being, in our time boundaries, like, we don't have to apologize for being exactly who we are and not being involved in something that maybe someone is trying to put that blame on us or shame us for. Come on now. Apparently I have pretty strong boundaries. You got to validate yourself. Yes. Yeah, I love that. Because we need that. We need to be able to say, hey, you know what? That one isn't mine. I didn't make that happen. I didn't do that. And I still care about you, even though I'm not saying sorry for something that I didn't do and I'm not sorry for. Because when we do say sorry, we don't want it to be wasted. We want sorry to be genuine when we are apologizing to folks. We want to apologize in their language. And so a disingenuine because it really didn't involve me, because we just want to say yes, or we just want to be responsible for someone's happiness, it just doesn't work for us. Yes, I love the validation in the chat. I love it. All right. So one of the things I love to do, take a deep breath. We talked a lot about boundaries. Oof, I see y'all shoulders moving. Big breath, big breath. I think breathing is so important. It also reminds me that we're still here, still present, still healing, still learning. So I always love a good deep breath. So that's just our moment to shake off learning about our boundaries and validating our boundaries. We don't want to shake that off. We want to keep that around. All right. So I know we're going to talk about shame, and we are. So shame is so intertwined in this, and we've already kind of brought up some of these. I don't know if anyone is a Big Mouth fan. Big Mouth is a very funny cartoon on Netflix. Inappropriate, but very funny. And one of the things that they have in their 3rd season is the shame wizard. And I just felt like, man, he came straight out of a Brene Brown book about shame. And so that's why I use this image. If you go out and look in YouTube streets, I think have a more appropriate version of the shame wizard. But it's like this deep-seated feeling inside of us that calls up shame a lot quicker than we want shame to be called up for us. And so that's kind of what the shame wizard is. But for trauma survivors, shame can often intertwine with difficulties setting boundaries, right? So when we're like, man, you know what? I didn't feel good about that. I should have set that boundary. And now you have this shame associated with not setting that boundary. And that can be hard to deal with because now it kind of feeds this maybe self-fulfilling prophecy that you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you shouldn't have, you weren't smart enough, right? And now all of that self-blame that comes with being a trauma survivor is just amplified by shame. It's amplified by that shame wizard, like speaking to you about that boundary you could have or should have set. Our shame wizard is also present post-trauma in general, because we are people who say, you know what, let me figure out what I can control. And oftentimes we say, you know what, the only thing I can really control is me. So maybe this was me. Maybe this was my fault. Maybe this was right. And we start turning that accountability on ourselves for something that we didn't do, something that we didn't ask for, something that we didn't stand in line and advocate for ourselves, right? We were harmed. And so shame is just kind of ever present. And so I find that there's a lot of, it's very analogous to align shame with boundaries, because boundaries, I think, actually ward off a little bit of that shame. And we'll talk about that going forward. But we're going to try to shake off a lot of that shame with another poll. So hopefully you are still inside of the Slido on your phone. And we're going to I want to just get a number. So just a number of what was the earliest age you experienced shame? The earliest age that you remember experiencing shame. Okay, wow, young. Yeah, right? Yep, I see somebody in the chat too, 6. Yeah, I'm gonna put yours in here just in case it amplifies a number.
We also have 5 in the chat.
Yeah, let me add that too. 5. Wow. Keep going. Keep going. Wow. Right? Shame exists very early for us. Thank you for being a part of that poll. Shame isn't just ever present for sexual assault survivors. As we can see, a lot of us learn shame at an incredibly young age. So the shame wizard is actually probably an old imaginary friend, been around for a while. And so when things do happen to us, or outside of the realm of trauma, when we do something that maybe wasn't in alignment with mission at work, or when we do something that wasn't in alignment with values in our home, right? That shame wizard is just louder, bigger, and more ever present. And so learning shame under the age of 10, when you're still developing who you are, can be really tough. Can be really, really tough. And so we're going to figure out a few ways to kind of shake that off and maybe do some unlearning. And I'm sure those of you who have been on your survivor journey for a little while, you know, we do a lot of unlearning in our process, in our survivor journey. We do a lot of unlearning because so many things were maybe baked into our parents or into their parents, and they pass it on to their children, and their children pass it on to us. And now the shame wizard is like this generational curse, imaginary friend that we keep carrying, right? Man, 5 is young. 5 is young. And a lot of you responded to that being 5, being so young. So how shame impacts survivors, right? Trauma survivors frequently experience shame due to the nature of the event, right? For survivors, because our bodies our body boundaries were violated. And we still have to carry this body everywhere we go, into the places we have to go into. That shame is just, unfortunately, sometimes with us, right? I don't want to speak for all survivors, but I know in my experience, the shame was just there, right? I couldn't get away from it because it was in my body, it was with my body, right? The power dynamics involved in this societal stigma surrounding certain types of trauma, right? So when we start talking about sexual trauma in general, right, especially in maybe some of our SARC classes or different educational platforms, the biggest thing we talk about sexual assault is that it incorporates two things. What are those two things? One starts with a P, one starts with a C. What are those two things? Somebody got it. One starts with a P, one starts with a C. You can yell it out if you want to come off mic. Yep, that's one. Come on now, power. What else? One more. And control. Talk to me. Power and control. And so when we are looking to take power back, when we're looking to take control back, that can be a really difficult process if it's intertwined with shame. Shame makes all of that incredibly difficult. Some of us, especially service members, depending on where we, how we served, right, can have an extra layer of shame of who I should be, right? What are my core values? I'm a defender, right? I stand at the gate with a gun. I shouldn't be harmed. And now this shame just completely intertwines with, wow, I can't possibly take power back because who am I now? Is the narrative of who I am changed, right? And so being mindful of how shame can intertwine itself in our healing journey is so mindful, because we can find ways to call it out and change it. Shame develops because sometimes we internalize blame. National Denim Day came out of the what did you wear rhetoric. And that's because there was a lot of, hey, you have the control over what happened to you, so you should have, you could have, right? All of those awful narratives that just completely invalidate our healing. And so being able to call that out too, and call it out in public spaces if you feel good about it, if that does not bounce up against your boundaries, calling those things out is so important, because you can help someone else release shame as well. And even saying some of those things out loud can help us too. Yep, victim blaming is so big, it's so real. And unfortunately, in all the years that I've been doing this work and all the years that our military has been doing this work, victim blaming is still present. Yep, Cindy, I'm with you. It's still present. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And we unfortunately bear the burden of either calling it out, which can be sometimes unsafe for us. But we bear that burden of being the advocate, being the person that calls it out, or on the unfortunate side, internalizing it and figuring out ways that we can change, which we shouldn't have to do. That's not our ministry. Thank you for that. And then shame also develops in secrecy and isolation. So sometimes we turn inward when we maybe can't trust our surroundings. Maybe we can't trust our unit. Maybe we can't trust family. And so we'll turn inward and we'll isolate. But what that does is that gives the shame wizard a lot of platform, a lot of quiet space without anybody else to negate it, without any tools to negate it, like therapy tools. And that shame wizard can get very loud on that platform. And so being mindful of maybe what someone you care about is going through is also important, but also being mindful of what you're going through, so that maybe you can build and have that community with someone, so that they don't cope in secrecy and isolation. I always like to, again, add in that element of service members, especially officers. There's also this kind of added layer of leadership that I think intertwines in this story. And so it offers more of a space for us to maintain secrets about what may have happened to us. It offers that space of, it's not just for me, there's so many people looking at me. There's so many people under me that see me, right? So I need to operate in a little bit of secrecy so they don't know the full truth. They don't know what's happening. And that secrecy can be very, very isolating in and of itself. But also, as you go up in the ranks, it's really lonely at the top. right? It gets really, really lonely at the top. So that isolation, that secrecy can just be really intertwined in giving that shame wizard a platform. I see here, fishbowl magnifies fear, talk to me. So look, I didn't put this in my timing, so I'm gonna just tell this story. When I first got to my first duty station in Germany, I remember talking to my boss, which was now in my growth, I've learned was maybe not the best conversation, but one of the things he told me was, hey, you're Black, you're female, you're new here, you're one of maybe 8 on this entire base that's a Black female officer. You're in a fishbowl, everyone knows your name, and you may not have ever met them. They're gonna know you. And I was like, oh, sure. I mean, hi, sir, my name is Tisha is probably how we should have started this, but cool. Let me know that I'm in a fishbowl and everybody's looking at me. And I lie to you not, I think I walked to the base club and a young lady stopped me and was like, hey, you're the new lieutenant in FSS, right? And I was like, oh, yes, I am. Like, it was such a, and so it immediately like had this fear element to me. Like I immediately was like, okay, I actually do need to be very careful about what I'm doing on base, how I'm being perceived. And at the time it was so many other things, how my hair looks, how I'm speaking, so on and so forth, right? It was just a lot of that. And so that fishbowl, oof, like that recalled that. It's like a core memory for me of just like, yes, everyone is watching you. Everyone can see what you're doing. Everyone's going to comment. Everyone's going to have an opinion. And now I have to operate in secrecy and isolation. I also see a comment. I was told that if I couldn't protect myself, why would anyone trust me to protect them? Oh my, I can't believe somebody said that to you. Oh my, I'm so sorry that anyone with a voice box said that out of their mouths and out of their minds. My goodness, that's, yeah, because power and control is language that we should have been using a long time ago that we didn't use, because it has nothing to do with what kind of warfighter I am, or if I'm, if I have the mastery of an M16, or if I am a special ops person, or if I'm a HR professional. Like that doesn't change someone trying to exert power and control over us, and us being victimized by someone. That is not our fault. Thank you for sharing that, but I am so sorry that happened to you. I see this one that says, okay. Thank you, Seneca. There were only 3 Black lieutenants at my first duty station, so I totally relate. Yeah, like sometimes when you're one of one, or when you're the only woman, or when you're the only person of color, or the only queer person, right? All of those things can be difficult, and they do put you in that fishbowl. Absolutely. All right, a few more slides. I'm gonna try not to go over time. Seneca is doing a great job keeping me on schedule, so I'm gonna do my best. So one of the things I just want y'all to take a moment, we'll only read like one line out of here, but I want y'all to just have another tool in your toolkit. Shame isn't always our enemy. It can be, and we talked a lot about that, but it can also be our ally. And so I just want y'all to take a moment and look at this chart, and we'll just go through kind of this first line. Scenario 1 says, I broke their rules, and I neither followed nor broke my rules, right? That's the scenario. And it kind of describes, right, I broke their rules or their social norms of the dominant culture, right? I feel fear of being shunned and cast out. I feel the fear of being punished. My shame response aims to restore my image as the good person, right? Or the good officer, or the good leader, right? So that's the description. Shame being your enemy would say, I did the wrong thing according to them. I'm not good enough for them, which I can attest having felt that way in my leadership, right? Maybe I don't fit here. I used to say that to myself all the time. And negative self-talk, we can talk about offline. But right, I don't fit here. I must not be the right caliber of officer. But shame, as my ally says, I didn't create these rules, and they don't define my values, worth, or principles. There is nothing wrong with me. And I just felt that deep in my spirit. No, I didn't create an Air Force that didn't allow my hair to be its natural texture, right? So burning it and doing all the things I had to do to try to fit in isn't actually mine to carry. It's not my shame to carry, right? That's a scenario I always think of when I think about that. And so being able to say, you know what, where's this shame coming from? What do I feel in my body? And then being able to call it out. And I told y'all before, I love being called out, and I love when my girls in my group call each other out, because this is a moment where we can say, you know what, you didn't make that rule. That shame is not yours to carry, and we can kind of release that. So keep in mind that shame can be your ally and your enemy, and we got to find ways to make it our ally, and not necessarily change the core of who we are, but to change the narrative around the situation. Does that make sense? Okay, I see some head nods. Y'all with me tonight. I love it. All right, just a few more small slides. This is just a shame spiral, because sometimes we can be stuck in the shame, especially if we are operating in secrecy and isolation. We can be stuck in that shame and get into a shame spiral, right? So event, feeling, probably negative feeling, often negative feeling, thoughts about the perception of what's happening. And then we sometimes like to validate the negative perception. And so we say, oof, you know what, actually, I don't belong here. And these are the other pieces of evidence as to why I don't belong here. And then we say, you know what, maybe I'm gonna just separate, or I'm gonna just leave this situation because I'm clearly not good enough. And now we're in this spiral. And if you're in secrecy and isolation, there is no one and no tools to negate any of that. And so outside of this shame spiral are some of the things that you can do to negate the things that are happening in that shame spiral. In the chat, I see I have a lot of allies. I just don't consider it shame. Yes. And you don't have to consider it shame. Thank you for that. So some of the ways that you can kind of combat the shame spiral, right? Work on that negative self-talk. We don't have to talk down to ourselves. Talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. That's always I know my therapist always says that. Would you tell your friend that? Like, reel it in, girl, right? Find a healthy emotional outlet. That could be all kinds of things, right? Go walking, go running, do some yoga, eat a good snack, hang out with a good friend, get a hug, all those things that can maybe be a healthier emotional outlet, and some other things on here. And right, one of the big things, and you all can read this in your own time, but recognize that shame is real. We often, because we're trying to flip the narrative, sometimes we'll just talk ourselves out of it. Like, oh, you know what? I deserve this shame. Let's just move on. No, take a moment, pause, take that deep breath and say, you know what? I don't deserve this shame. I didn't make that rule. I didn't cause this to happen. I didn't wear the wrong thing. I wasn't out at the wrong hour. I didn't forget all of my training in this time where I needed to protect myself, right? Taking that moment to recognize, you know what? This feeling is real, but it's not accurate. And tell yourself that, right? Let's see. And then this is another reflective cycle, which I thought was pretty cool. I found online. It's actually by Graham Gibbs. It was developed in 1988, just to give some structure to our learning and reflective experiences. And so I always thought this was just a great cycle for us to think, even just outside of trauma shame, but all the other types of shame that we can experience, and just really asking the real questions. Because those narratives will seep in. That shame wizard, he get real loud. He's like Beyonce on Cowboy Carter, right? He gets real loud and real relatable and all these things. When really we gotta tamper that shame wizard down. We gotta make him less of an A-lister sometimes, him or her, right? It doesn't have to be a male. And really talk brass tacks facts. What happened? What am I feeling and thinking? Checking in with my body. What was good or bad about that situation? Let's talk real evidence instead of the thing that's kind of feeding that negative self-talk. Analyze, make sense out of the situation. What's happening here? And then sometimes, and this doesn't always apply to trauma, but what else could we have done? And what else could we have done, I think really applies outside of that, because being harmed, there isn't anything else we could have done. Somebody harmed us, and that's different. But when we're just talking through shame, thinking about what that conclusion could have been, or saying, I didn't do this, I didn't cause this wasn't me, and being able to validate that in yourself. And then if you need to, develop an action plan. That action plan might be getting that hug or that snack or that fist bump from a good friend, or that good FaceTime with your sister, or whatever that thing is that gives you that outlet. And then if you need to go through that cycle again, go through it again. And so I don't know, we may not have time for our last poll. So if we do, maybe we'll go back. But I want y'all to think about positive things that you can say to yourself to set a boundary or release shame. Something you would say to a friend when they come to you and say, oh God, I want this relationship to work, but I don't know how to say it. I just want to say yes to that person. What would you say to that friend? And I just want y'all to think about it, because I don't think we'll have time for the poll. I want to end this with giving you some permissions as kind of we close this out. You have the permission to identify your needs and values. They're so important. How you grew up isn't how you have to present as an adult. If you have new values, new principles, new perspectives, own those, honor those. Be direct. If you need to dress something down, dress it down. Hey, that's not going to work for me. That is not my ministry. That's how I do it. That's what works for me. But you say whatever you need to say to dress something down. If it is not working for you, communicate that, especially if it's in a relationship that you want to work. Practice saying no. It's a full sentence, y'all. And say that to yourself in the mirror sometimes. It's a full sentence. No is a full sentence. You could say 9, you could say neat, you could say it in 18 other languages. It's still a full sentence. Set boundaries. Practice setting boundaries, even if it's like low stakes boundaries, right? Really don't like my green peppers to touch my red peppers. Boundary. It's not completely unreasonable. Get a bigger plate. It's fine, right? But until your confidence builds, keep practicing those boundaries. It's so important. And we, as we know as service members, how we practice is how we play. Validate those feelings. Somebody in the chat validated themselves today, and I hope you all found some validation today. Your feelings are absolutely valid. When your brain and your second brain says, this doesn't feel right, or that feels good, validate that. It is true for you. Set consequences for boundary violation in relationships that we want to work. Sometimes we have to say, you know what? I'm not going to come over to dinner in this particular climate because these conversations are really disturbing me. They don't make me feel comfortable. And that's a violation because your time and your presence are so important. And if people care about you, maybe they'll change the course of their behavior to not keep bumping up against your boundary. Seek support from a therapist or a trusted friend. I will never negate the sister talks that I have I have a lot of sisters, and the sister talks that we have are sometimes really good enough to unpack some real things on how we grew up or what we need as the women we are today. So seek support, and I will always champion therapy. Therapy is so good, whether you're in crisis or not. Definitely find a good therapist in your life. Develop coping strategies. That's so important. Find the thing that feeds you. Tune in and trust your body. Trust your body is the fastest way we can start gaining power and control back in our survivor journey. Safely unpack shame. And I say safely because you should do it in a space that's not isolated, that's not secret, and that's supportive. I want y'all to keep that in mind when you unpack shame, but make sure you do it. Take your time, make sure you are equipped, but do it. Release the guilt. This ain't your fault. You didn't do it. So release the guilt. And of course, love you unconditionally and unapologetically. You don't have to apologize for setting a boundary. You don't have to apologize for telling somebody it's not your ministry or it has nothing to do with you. You can love you unapologetically and unconditionally. There are no conditions to the love you can have for yourself. So keep that in mind. Any questions? Any questions?